Well, hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so I'll just do a quick walk around the greenhouse today at least. I'll see if I can get up the allotment a little bit later on in the week, but as you can see it's still chucking down. You can see the rain running down the windows. Even though we've got 18 degrees in the greenhouse and we have been up to sort of 37, it's only dropped to 13.5 at night. And I've been asked a couple of questions. Do I heat the greenhouse? And the answer to that is no, I don't. So far this year I've not actually heated the greenhouse. I've done a little bit of germinating in the house, which I'll show you in a moment, but no, I haven't heated the greenhouse at all yet this year. If I do, it'll only be a candle in a tub like I've shown you before. But just starting here, as you can see, starting to get some little shoots on the vines. Now, originally, what I was going to do was cut the vines down. They reckon you cut about a third off, but because I'm trying to get these to grow up, obviously I want to sort of take them off as as long as I can. So I think this top bit here is not going to grow again. But I've got quite a healthy little shoot there, so I think that's the one that will carry on going up. Likewise on here, I've got a shoot forming here, I believe. Time will tell. It's possibly that one there actually, but that's the grapevine at the moment. And the one thing I have noticed is I've got that growing outside. I don't know if you can see there, but that looks like it's coming from the rootstock of the vine. So we've got the grapevine there. Then obviously that's where it's been, sort of joined onto the rootstock. There, so that's where the graft is. Likewise, the graft is there. So that's obviously coming from the ground. So what I'm going to do is dig that down. I don't think it's a raspberry. It's a bit too far from the raspberries to be anything. But what I'm going to do is when I've got a bit of dry weather this weekend, I'm going to just dig down and make sure that's coming from the roots of the grapevine. And I'm going to cut it off anyway, but I just want to make sure that that's coming through. So these are the sweet peas that I grew last week. Nothing as of yet. The kale, it looks like something's had a go there. I don't know if it's a slug or if a mouse has got in the greenhouse or what, but it looks like something's had a nibble of them. These are the other brassicas that I've grown. These are the broccoli, and I did actually have a question of what variety of broccoli I was growing. And I'll show you in a moment when I get to the seeds. But that's the broccoli there. As I say, that's the kale. Those are the strawberries. They're sort of starting to grow a bit now. The little fruits haven't formed anymore. But from they're the other sweet peas I put in again. No show. They're the salads. Sorry, they're the herbs. So that's the marjoram, the sweet basil, more sweet basil there. That's the marjoram again. And then we've got some thyme growing there. You can tell the leaves look like thyme already. That's a bit of basil there. Those are the cuttings that I took of the lavender. Oh, excuse me. These are the salad leaves, and they've started to come up. As you can see, there's some little bits in the middle there. So that's where I've planted 5 seeds. You can see they're breaking through the ground there. They're the calendulas, and believe it or not, I told you they grew like weeds. There's one there, look, and you can see there's one coming through there as well. So they are coming through. So considering they've only been in there a week, There's another one breaking through there. I'll just pull that bit of dirt back. There you go. There's one breaking through there. So they're growing all right. The lettuce isn't doing anything. Classic schoolboy error here. I haven't put a label in there, and I can't for the life of me remember what I've planted in there. However, I'll look back on my video, but I think what was I growing last? It was the last thing I put in last week. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, I need to put a label on that, so I'm not sure what's going on there. The hydrangeas are still growing, so they're obviously coming on. And I've got a little shoot. I don't know if you can see in. I'll just zoom in. There's a little shoot coming there. So they're growing. These are the plants. I can never remember the name. I'm going to have to put a label on there because I feel an idiot every week for not being able to remember the name. But I'll put it along the bottom. These trees really do need to go out now. As you can see, they're really shooting up. And if I'm going to start doing the sort of trimming them back and training them this year, what I need to do is, before too much longer, is trim these back to encourage them to go. So these are the trees I'm going to be doing the pleaching with, along the frame of the where the raspberries used to be. So I basically need to get these out as soon as, really, so I can start to sort of trim them back and get them into the shape that I want them. And these are the tomatoes. So those are these are all money makers that have come through. These ones have been in the house, and as you can see, they're reasonably spindly, but they've all germinated. And those are the ones that I grew in the greenhouse, all planted exactly the same time as you saw in the video. Them ones have germinated. There's slightly less germination on these. That one is coming through, as you can see there. There's one in the middle. But they look stronger plants than these, and these I'm going to be potting up shortly. I'll show you a quick video of those. Those are the cherry tomatoes that I put in, and the Alicante tomatoes, another Alicante there. So what I'm going to do is put the Alicante ones in the house, I think, and give them a bit of a boost. And the cherry tomatoes, at least I'll leave them in here for this week. See if they germinate okay, because I only really want a couple of those, and I've planted quite a few. But the Alicantes, obviously, I want a few of those to put in. So all told, I've got I think 30 plants here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah, 40 plants I've got there, pretty much. I think there's the odd one that's got just one in. This one here's just got the one in. But so there's 39 plants there, and I've got another few there. So I'm most certainly going to have a, sort of few plants. So I'll just show you. I don't know if it'll be in this video or the other one. I'm going to be putting out a couple, or 2, possibly 3 videos this weekend. But I'll pot these up next. So that's the greenhouse as it stands today. This bit's a bit of a mess here because I've got all sorts of pots and stuff there waiting to be used. The one thing I would say is I'm saving the pot bottles, because I'm going to be using them for little cloches for the parsnips in a couple of weeks' time. So if you want to copy what I'm doing, start saving your pot bottles. A little bit of a haul video, sorry. I went to Wilco's last week, and these are the pots that I used to do the broccoli with last week. And these are, for 12 of these in Wilco's, they were £1, so they're about sort of 8p each, and these are going to last you a good 5 years if you look after them, if not more. I mean, some of the ones that I've got here, I've had, most certainly these green ones at the back, I've had them for probably about 10 years. So I've got a load more here that I've got sort of dotted about, but these I've had for about 10 years. They are different to these. They're a bit thicker, but if you look after your pots, they will last you. So it is an investment, really. So it's 8p each. I don't think you can complain at that. I also got some more seeds, and these were buy 2 get 1 free, so the cheapest one free. I've got some Wilco Swede Best of All, which will obviously be going directly into the ground. I've got some F1 parsnips, and those were the priceless sum of £1.60. And I just thought because I always put about 3 different varieties in. I've got 2 already, so that's going to be the 3rd. And there's a reasonable amount of seeds. There's 200 seeds in there, so that's more than enough for me. So there's a good variety of for your basic seeds. Wilko's is pretty good. They're most certainly a very competitive price, and they haven't got masses of different varieties. But if you want your basics, then Wilko's is definitely one of the best shops to go to, I think. And this is beetroot. Another variety. I'm going to be growing 3 varieties of beetroot this year. They're all red. This is a completely red one. There's another one which is red with white sort of veins or sort of rings in it. But these are these come from Wilko's, and they're supposed to be really easy to grow. There's the Wilko's beetroot Boltardi. I'm not sure if Boltardi is the actual variety, but it seems to be. That's what they're called anyway. But I've never had a beetroot bolt on it, but anyway. So those are some seeds that I got from Wilco. So I just thought I'd let you know what I was getting, just in case you want to try myself. These parsnips I've actually had before, and I've also had these swede before, and I've had really good results with these swede and parsnip in the past. So those are most certainly two to go for if you want a really good crop and cheap seeds as well. This one I've not tried these ones before, but to be honest with you, with beetroot you can't go wrong. So I'd recommend you getting them. But basically, I got those 3 packets of seeds for £2.20, which is pretty good. Okay, so Mother Nature Part 18, and Part 18 is all about sunlight, and how much do you need in the garden, and sort of what grows best in direct sunlight and shade and where else. Come on, then. Come on. And really, you need to think that plants have sort of evolved really, from different circumstances. So a lot of what I'm about to say will make sense when I explain, sort of the background too. But if you look at animals for start off, I mean a lot of animal behaviour and the the variation in animals and how people have adapted is all to do with basically how much light we get. I mean, if you look at obviously the original people, which obviously originated in Africa, they'd have been sort of reasonably dark skinned, not sort of too dark skinned, but sort of reasonably dark skinned, and they would have had brown eyes and all the rest of it. And then as Africa as time went on, the rainforests in the middle of Africa sort of turned to deserts, and we've now got the Sahara Desert, and sort of these sort of people were exposed to more, as opposed to living in the shade underneath the trees, they were exposed to direct sunlight, so their skin went a lot darker. So obviously the African people that we know today are obviously got really dark skin, dark eyes, sort of brown eyes, and the people who sort of went through Europe and sort of through sort of Europe and off to Asia and sort of top, and obviously ended up in sort of more northern countries. They're a lot fairer now, because we get less light. So obviously I'm from sort of Britain, which is from a latitude point of view, we're quite high up, so we don't get a lot of sunlight. So my eyes are blue. I've sort of I personally haven't evolved, but my sort of family line has sort of developed to have paler skin, lighter eyes, to make them more sensitive to light and stuff like that. So in exactly the same way, plants are just like animals. I mean, if you look at the sort of the plants that have sort of originated in the sort of sort of around the equator, as they've sort of moved up sort of north and south where there's less light, they've sort of evolved, and you get different variations that can cope with different light. So understanding where the plants that we grow today are obviously they're quite diverse. We get them from all over the over the world. Obviously, I mean, I'm growing stuff in the allotment here, which is basically from all parts of Europe, all parts of the all over the world. Obviously, we've got pumpkins from America. We've got all different gourds from all over the place. And we've got some sort of tomatoes and stuff really by nature are grown in the sort of sort of Mediterranean type areas. So if you think basically the different plants, you can sort of realise that you need to understand the plant's requirements, and obviously plants need light for energy, and that's energy is used when the plant basically converts water and carbon dioxide into oxygen, which it releases back out into the atmosphere, and glucose and fructose, which is basically the building blocks for the amino acids that basically build the plant. You know, all of its roots, its leaves, its stems and everything is all built from that. So the plant needs light to grow, but different plants need different amounts of light to survive. And if you've got a particularly, you know, I mean, I'm quite lucky here. You know, I've got a south-facing allotment, which gets light. The sun comes up over there, and it comes all the way around, and then sets over there. So I get a good, in the summer, you know, I'm getting sort of, you know, a good 14, 15 hours of light on my allotment, all round. So, you know, I don't need to worry about light. But obviously, if you've got a walled garden, or if you've got quite an enclosed area, and you've got sort of, your plants are in shade for a reasonable amount of the day because of objects or buildings or wherever around, you don't need to worry too much. Well, pretty much all vegetables will grow with sort of no more than sort of 6 hours of light, and in fact some vegetables actually prefer to have less light. So if you've got all vegetables, if you can guarantee in the summer you're getting 6 hours of light, you know, you can grow anything pretty much. You know, so if you've got the morning sun, or if you've got the midday sun, or if you've got the evening sun, really you'll be able to grow vegetables. So don't sort of worry about it too much. And I've known instances where people have had down to 4 hours of light a day, and they've still been able to grow vegetables really successfully and have good yields. So I would say as a rule of thumb 6 hours, but if you get less than that, I wouldn't worry too much about that. As long as you're getting sort of 4 or 5 hours, that's more than enough to grow vegetables well. You know, they'll be nice and healthy. So knowing your plant's origins really is the key to knowing sort of what vegetables will work well. If you've got a shaded area in your garden, obviously you want to grow things there that aren't so dependent on light, and obviously the plants that most certainly need plenty of light, those are the ones that you're going to grow in the area where you've got a lot more light. So the best thing I can suggest to you is think about where the plant originated from. If you've got a plant that's got large leaves, the chances are it's evolved under the canopy of a forest where it's not going to get a lot of light. So if you think of plants that have got large leaves, like things like sort of leafy greens, chards, herbs, lettuce, kale, plants like that, these plants are going to grow well in the shade. You know, you don't necessarily need direct sunlight for more than, you know, sort of 4 or 5 hours. Or if you've got a shady spot, obviously, you know, I can only really talk about sort of direct sunlight or shade. How much shade you've got, really, you don't know. I mean, obviously, shade can be anything from a bit of dappled shade from some branches on some trees to something being under, you know, behind a wall or something where it's got almost no light at all. It's almost dark. So, you know, the shade I'm talking about is I'd say moderate shade. So, you know, so most certainly you can grow things like that. And certain plants do grow better actually in shade. Most certainly, very colourful flowers or plants that have got colourful leaves grow better in the shade. And you'll find that if they are in the shade, they'll grow more vibrantly and the colours are brighter. So things like if you're growing fuchsias, like I've said before, I grew a lot of fuchsias, grow really well in the shade. If you want the blooms to be really bright and you know, sort of deep intensity of colour, you actually grow the plant in a shady position. And if you're growing them in a greenhouse, you would tend to put some kind of netting over or paint the glass white or whatever to you know, to provide some shade for the plant. Cucumbers are a plant which have got reasonably big leaves, and cucumbers will grow really well in the shade. So cucumbers are a plant that doesn't need direct sunlight for long. And things, any gourds really, you know, will grow well. So cucumbers, gherkins, pumpkins, you know, stuff like that. butternut squashes and all, all that kind of thing. They'll grow well in the shade. And then you've got plants that, some plants that, where you've got a mixture of shade and light. And really the plants I'm talking about now are plants that obviously grow in a forest, or originally grew in some kind of forest, that climb. And obviously I'm talking about vines. So if you imagine a vine has evolved by having its roots obviously in the ground, and then it'll send up shoots and runners, just like these grapevines you got in the greenhouse. And these shoots and runners will climb up any structure that's there, which is normally a tree, and it'll grow up. So basically what you have is the roots of the plant are obviously in the ground, and then the shoots will grow up, and then the tips of the plant are up right up in the canopy where it's going to get lots of sunlight. And surprisingly or not, grapevines love to have the roots in shade and the actual shoots in direct sunlight, because it's evolved in some kind of forest. So obviously, the roots of the plant are in the shade where it's cool, which is exactly what grapevines like. They like to have their roots in cool, sort of shaded conditions, and they also love to have their the shoots, their sort of heads, if you like, in direct sunlight, which is exactly what it would be in nature. So what you need to do is think about where the plant originates from, how it would have grown in nature, in its natural habitat, and then try and synthesise them same conditions again, if you like. So plants that like lots of sunlight are fruit-bearing plants. So things like strawberries, raspberries, all the berries, all the currant and stuff like that. Really, you need them in direct sunlight, as much as you can possibly get. Pumpkins love sunlight, so even though I said they will grow in the shade, they love sunlight. So pumpkins love to be in the sunlight. That's why they've got, in America they grow out in the fields, where you've got field after field after field of them, and they're in no shade at all. They're in direct sunlight all day long. So pumpkins love sunlight, and obviously any fruits, even including tomatoes. Really, tomatoes need to have as much sunlight as possible. That's why when you're ripening the fruits later on in the year, like I showed you last year, as soon as the fruits have grown and they're not going to get any bigger, that's when you start cutting off the branches. And you're not cutting off the branches for any other reason but to let light through onto the fruits, so that they'll ripen off properly. So anything that fruits, you need sunlight, most certainly. But as I say, a lot of the leafy greens and a lot of flowering plants, if you're growing plants for your garden as well, actually like a bit of shade, or they're actually improved by the shade. So the other thing that I would say is some plants that you need to consider from a sunlight point of view is, I always say never water the leaves of a plant. What you can get is water droplets form on the leaves, and a lot of plants have kind of very, very fine hairy surfaces on the leaves, and what will happen is the water will bead onto the on the leaf. So what you'll end up with is like a bead of water, rather than it's spreading out on the leaf. You actually get a bead of water on the leaf, and if you get sunlight on there, the bead of water acts like a lens, and it'll focus the light onto the central point of the bead onto the leaf, and it'll burn the leaf. So that's another thing about sunlight you need to be careful of. If you have got plants that are reasonably tender, which are in direct sunlight, what you most certainly don't want to do is water them in direct sunlight. Always wait for either the morning or the evening to water, like I've said before, because you can get these beads of water, and the sunlight will then go through there, and it'll be focused onto the leaf, and it'll be, sort of potentially burn the leaf. Going back to shaded areas, obviously, if you're going to grow your brassicas in a tunnel, obviously the tunnel's going to give you some shade. So that's actually better for the brassicas, because they're sort of leafy, leafy plants. The one thing that you need to be careful of is slugs, snails, and stuff like that. They love shaded areas. Slugs and snails don't like direct sunlight. So if you've got a shaded area of your garden, this is where you need to be focusing on making sure you've got no slugs and snails, because they're going to go in that area. And if you've got any plants in there that slugs and snails like to eat, they're going to go through them like a like a shotgun. So if you have got a shaded area of your garden or your allotment, that's where you need to focus your slug control basically, and your sort of snail control. But having said that, shaded areas are good because you can get insects like hoverflies and other beneficial insects which also love the shade. And I don't know if you ever want to attract dragonflies to your garden, you need a shaded area for those, because they like shaded area as well. So most certainly if you've got a pond, it's nice to have part of your pond under shade as well. But if you want to attract like hoverflies and stuff like that into your garden, you need a shaded area. So that's another reason to have a shaded area. If if you're going to grow trees or whatever, which you're going to grow. Sorry, if you're going to grow trees which are going to form shade, that's another good reason for having a shaded area in your garden, because it will attract beneficial insects into your garden. So wildlife like shade. It's not natural for there to be large expanses of ground without sort of pockets of shade for insects and stuff. So by putting in some shade in your allotment, you are sort of making a better mix of environment to attract the types of insects and stuff that you want. Having said that though, watch out for the shaded areas, because they're going to be a little bit moister than the more exposed areas to the sun, so you are going to get slugs in there. Going back to the vines, sorry, I'm jumping backwards and forwards a bit really. Going back to the vines, obviously I've talked about grapevines. Also plants like beans and peas are also because of viney type plants, so they sort of climb up. So these plants also like or don't mind shade. So things like beans, peas, cucumbers, obviously that's another vine plant. Their sort of grows as like a vine. What they'll do, they'll actually find the light, so they'll grow up a structure just like the grapevine does, and that'll so they like a bit of shade. So if you have got a shaded area in your garden and you're not quite sure what to grow there, peas and beans grow well in shade, because they'll sort of climb up and find their own light. So other they're all sort of quite tall plants. Talking about plants that sort of grow on sort of ground level, what plants grow well in shade? I would say if you are going to grow vegetables in the shade where you've only got a sort of limited number of days of light, or the sort of dapple shade for during the day, things like celery and also vegetables like carrots will also grow well in the shade, which brings me back to one of the comments in the comment section. You can grow carrots underneath other plants because of the shade that those plants sort of cast onto the ground. The carrots will still grow reasonably well under there. So carrots will most certainly grow in the shade, and things like celery always like shade. Obviously with celery you typically put them in a piece of drain pipe anyway to draw them out, so they don't get a lot of light anyway. So leeks will grow reasonably well in the shade as well. So those sort of plants, you can grow well in the shade. And really, bush tomatoes, some of the bush tomatoes that you grow outside, there's quite a few varieties of them which will grow well in the shade as well. Even though they are tomatoes, and I've said tomatoes like sunlight, to ripen off, you do find that there are there's a few varieties of bush tomatoes that you grow outside, and they typically are quite small sort of tomatoes, and they will also grow well in shaded areas. So there are really the best thing I can say is have a look at the seed packets basically, and they'll tell you, or at least the good one, the good companies will actually say these will grow well in shady conditions, or they need direct sunlight. But most certainly, if you've got 6 hours of light a day in the summer, obviously, any vegetable will grow. So, I hope this episode of Jim's Allotment has been of some use to you. Please do put any comments or questions that you've got below, and a big thank you to all of the new subscribers. I do appreciate your support with the channel, and I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Allotment.